Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see many of you here. It's my first time in Singapore, and I absolutely love the energy and so many of the use cases that we hear across here in the region. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the history of ElevenLabs, a little bit of the present and what we do, and how we see the future as we think about space of voice. I'm one of the co-founders. We co-founded the company together with Piotr. And while we co-founded the company in 2022, so not far from now, we've actually known each other with Piotr for 15 years. So we've been best friends since high school. We took all the same classes, and through the years got to study, to live, to work together. And luckily for us, we are still best friends, so the time is on our side. We both combine two of the different axes. Piotr is the research and the smartest person I know who has been able to assemble some of the best research in the audio space to really develop the new foundational models. And my background is on the product side. I worked at Palantir deploying a lot of those solutions across governments and Fortune 500 companies. And part of the story of how ElevenLabs started comes from where we are from. So we are both from Poland. And the very peculiar thing about Poland is that if you watch a foreign content in Polish, all the voices, whether that's a male voice, a female voice, any character voice in that movie, are narrated with one single character. As you can imagine, pretty terrible experience. It still happens today, and something we hope will change. And as we dive deeper into the voice aspects, we've realized that the problem is much deeper. It's not only dubbing that's a challenge, it's also all the content around us doesn't have that audio equivalent, whether it's narration, whether it's the voiceovers, whether it's the dubbing, of course, but also the way, as we think about the future, how the interaction with technology around us will look, it will change. Voice will be a big part of that, and whether that's the devices, whether that's the customer experience, or whether that's the robots in the future. And that's where our vision was born, of giving voice to technology and bringing that world alive, whether it's knowledge, whether it's stories, whether that's agents. Fast forward to today. As a company, we have both 5 million creators and developers on our platform, and some of the biggest companies that partner with us on those use cases, whether it's Cisco, whether that's Zoom, whether that's Deutsche Telekom, elevating that customer experience to another level, and are backed by some of the leading venture companies in the world to help us bring that technology to the world. But a little bit more about what we do and going a level deeper. On one side, we combine the research work alongside with the product. And that's probably the very different approach to a lot of companies in the space, where we've developed foundational models across audio space and then built a creative platform to help people turn and create marketing assets, voiceovers, any creative use case, and an agents platform to help build those interactive use cases, voice agents, and bring them alive. Going a level deeper, we all started with text-to-speech models. And the very hard thing was, how do you get the model to understand the text, understand what's being written, and based on that understanding, get the right intonation and the right emotion. That was one of the first innovations we brought into the space of audio with text-to-speech model, and since then expanded with all the other parts of audio, whether it's the speech-to-text and being able to understand how we speak, what we say, what emotions do we use, to then even orchestrating all of that together. So how do you combine the speech-to-text models, the LLM, the text models, and text-to-speech to really create that interactive experience? And of course, there's so much more in audio. There's the background sounds that you need to isolate. There's music, there's sound effects that you want to create. And we effectively, as a company, bring that all together alive and create those models from scratch, happily beating a lot of the other giants on all the benchmarks as well. On the first aspect, we've realized that there's a lot more than research to really bring the best use cases alive. So as you think about a call center experience, as you think about the personal agent, if you think about educational technology and a tutor that can teach you a specific subject, all of those require seamless interaction. That's one. But they also require integrations to the local systems. They need to know what you know, what's the knowledge that they can serve. They need the deployment help. They need to be reliably working, whether it's the testing, whether that's monitoring, whether that's evaluating, to be able to refine across that work. And that's where our agents platform got created, where we help create those voice agents and bring them to production. We frequently work with our partners where we have our engineering team work deeply with the partners to bring that into production. And as we think about our work, and part of the reason we are here in Singapore is we've built the team here in Singapore to work with the companies around on the ground and bring those use cases alive. And then on the other side, we have our creative platform work. And on the creative platform side, we help combine your existing brand assets, whether that's video, whether that's image, and amplify that with audio. Whether that's adding the music, whether that's adding sound effects, adding the voiceover, with a plethora of incredible voices across our ecosystem. One of the very hard things is making sure that the languages respect the dialect, respect the style, and our models are optimized for a lot of the languages. We started with Europe. That gives that a little bit of that edge where the models from the beginning gave us ability to globalize them and be able to fine-tune them. And now we fine-tune that for some of the key Asian languages as well. So that's a little bit about what we do. And I wanted to end with the last piece about how we see the future. And we see the future with three key aspects. The first one is that voice and the speech will be primary interface to the technology around us. It allows you to give a lot more than just text. It gives you the emotion, the style, the intonation, the imperfections. And similarly, as we think about that interface, it will just be easier. We hope that the phones will go back to the pockets, the technology will go to the background, and we'll be able to immerse ourselves more with each other. And voice being that interface will be critical. Second one, where the company started with that language barrier, we hope and we think it will disappear. And as that language barrier disappears, so do the barriers to creating, communicating with the world around us. We spoke earlier today about that hopefully being available in a real-time version, and for the fans of Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, effectively bringing the babblefish alive, where you can have the device to understand each other and hopefully understand each other in that own voice, in that own delivery as well. And we think this will happen over the next couple of years with innovations around the AI. And then the last piece, of course, as we think about those systems, they will be omni-modal. They will combine the best of audio, but also visual, also text input. They will be omnipresent. They will be around us and really bring a lot of that innovation in one place. And they will be omni-channel, allowing us to interact in all different ways. So with that glimpse into how we see the future, we'll shift now to the Fireside. Thanks so much for listening to that part, and excited for the conversation.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. First of all, welcome to Singapore. I think a lot of people are excited to actually have you here because there are founders who are actually using ElevenLabs. So I think a lot of people are really excited to see, what's the development of ElevenLabs. And I love the vision that you have, which is voice being a fundamental interface moving forward in terms of how humans interact with the world. But just a little bit of a quick background of what you talked about. For you guys as a company that was incorporated in April 2022, you guys have actually surpassed 200 million ARR, I think, and are expecting to top 300 mil by year end with a 6.6B valuation at the latest tender offer. And with reference to the spinal tap reference, you guys have totally turned it up to 11.
It's definitely I like the reference as well, and we are also so excited that there's so many companies that are already partners of ours here in the region. It's true. It is a quick growth. Of course, we realize that with AI, you can grow quickly, you can also drop quickly. But so far, it has been a great positive journey where we started a company in 2022. We launched our first product in 2023. That's when we started monetizing. And then the growth so far was 20 months to the first 100 million in revenue, then 10 months to the 200 million in revenue. And we actually just across 300 million as well. So it's number 11 is lucky for us. It's the 11th month of the year with November, so it feels fitting that we are doing that now, which was 5 months since the last one. So hopefully that trajectory continues. But really, all of that is a more of a proxy of what we see in the field, where that impact of the AI technology is real, where you can see whether it's the customer experience being elevated, whether it's creators creating something that wasn't possible before. So hopefully in the process, we are creating at least 10x value or 11x value.
11x value. I think that's the number that we're going for.
Exactly.
So let's go back to the start when you and Piotr raised your seed round at, I think, 2 mil at 9 mil post. What was the feature that actually you guys showed to VCs to actually tell them that you guys are not just another AI tool? Because I was just telling, in our chat prior to this, I actually looked at Wayback Machine to look at ElevenLabs website in the early days. It was literally like a little text box where you can type in, and then you can then get the audio from that.
Yeah, so when we raised the first round, it was 2022. This was still the year where cryptocurrencies and metaverse were the topics of the day, and nobody was building an AI, or just a few. So it was actually very hard. We had a lot of rejections at the time, and it wasn't easy to convince, because you had why would a small team create models that are incredible, and how will there was an interesting second piece, which was why voice will be an important factor, and nobody really was interested in that aspect at the time. And then, of course, free, which is still an open question of how defensible the technology will be in the grand scheme of things. But luckily, so my co-founder, Piotr, is an incredible researcher and has been able to assemble some of the best people. And the models we've been able to create in that early days were one of the big proof points to really bring people on board of okay, this is something that sounds human, that sounds as good as you would expect from another person. And then two, we started reaching out to a lot of users, trying to understand the demand, and then quickly realized that there's no good solution for a lot of the people creating, whether it's social media videos at the time or audiobooks at the time. And then, of course, soon after, some of the biggest companies thinking how we can create interactive experiences. So that demand was very clear pretty on, and that helped us a signal to a lot of the early investors of, okay, this is more real than we expected.
How are you guys thinking about Southeast Asian languages or even Asian languages? Because I was actually testing speech to text in Shanghai and Shenzhen, and even when I was in Shanghai, I was using the Whisper API, right? And there was a lot of, when I was on the ground, I quickly realized that there's a lot of dialects that the model actually doesn't recognize. So how are you guys thinking about, as you guys are kind of going global, how are you guys thinking about these languages?
Essential. I think it's almost, and we look at it from two angles. One is just the model being able to intonate and pronounce in the right language, but then also just the selection of voices you want in any of those languages needs to respect different styles, different ages, gender, and you want that selection. And I think the big benefit for us was that we, from the start, optimize the models to be able to cater to all different languages. So it wasn't English first and then others. We are initially testing with some of the European languages. So we knew straight away that it's an important factor. And as you think about our work, say here in Asia, you want Japanese or Korean, extremely hard languages with kanji characters. Making them work has been a challenge for most of the industry for years, which we find as our advantage, where we can go that step deeper and create something that's actually right. You mentioned dialects, so same with in India, of course, you have 20 few official languages. We want to be able to cater to all of them. And you need to try our speech to text. It's going to be even better than the one.
I will. So next question. You guys have actually maintained profitability, I think, while actually experiencing this explosive viral growth. Given that we actually have a lot of founders in the audience, what is the single most valuable lesson you've learned about balancing profitability while keeping a moat and maintaining hypergrowth? Because there's so many things to balance.
Yeah, I think it's in the current phase, the focus, of course, not at all costs, but growth should be the main thing, and then everything else is like a byproduct. If you see like the long-term part, I think for us the most beneficial, or one of the most beneficial things that could apply to the other founders was keeping the teams extremely small. So we've tried to create a setup which allows for very quick development across the company, where today we are 400 people, but let's say on the product side, this is 10 teams of 5 to 10 people, and the rest, even other structures, will resemble that structure where this is a lot of small teams. And each team is 5 to 10. They have high mandate and independence to be able to run ahead and create a lot of that independent work. We have no titles, so that's a little bit more comparable. And you know that the moment you join, you can have a high impact across any of the team you join. But what the setup really allows is that, and I'm sure everybody here is realizing how quick a lot of the foundational model development is happening. I mean, even this week we had Gemini 3, which was another incredible step change. And we want to make sure that as any of the models in the space become available, each of the teams can use them independently in that innovation cycle. And most of the teams might not benefit, some might benefit. And the same principle applies, of course, for our own models. We develop all the audio models, so you want to make sure that each team can develop that and integrate that as quickly as possible. Same will even be true in non-engineering sense. So we have our legal team or our go-to-market team, our ops team, they will also have engineers inside of the teams that will use a lot of the AI innovation to help innovate across and keep being smarter and more efficient with having that superpower that's out there. And that helped us streamline across every single part of the or not every single, increasingly every single part of the company, to have people that can automate that work. And given we keep the team small, the innovation cycle is a lot quicker.
Got it. But I guess, an overarching goal, I think, would be in relation to what you talked about before, which is ElevenLabs' goal of actually passing the speech Turing test. And this is actually very interesting because that's it becomes a situation where a human being cannot discern what is AI versus what is not. And I think that you guys, with the V3, you guys are actually getting closer to that. You mentioned that, 50% of customer support calls will actually be handled by voice AI agents in as little as 18 months. So there, we talked a little bit about trust as a currency, increasingly so in the future. How do you think about AI safety? Because when we think about you guys as a large company, how do we actually start to put in those kind of like guidelines or around AI safety?
Yeah, it's a big question. So there are two parts. There's the part of like as a company leading in that space, we treat it as our responsibility to also help develop a lot of the safeguards. And what this means in practice is every content generated traceable back to the account that generated it. 2, how do you try to catch the cases before they get generated, or as they get generated, get flagged, whether it's fraud and scam, and having that system in place. We've built our moderation models that help detect the textual content and flag them or block them accordingly. But then the third one, and that's kind of the second angle, is we've seen now so many open models being available, whether it's open source or commercial models, without those safeguards in place. So now the big question is, as most of the content around us becomes AI generated, how do we have and continue having that transparency across. And here we collaborate closely with a lot of the other partners in the space, whether it's the US AI Security Institute, the UK one, universities like Berkeley, where we try to give them a lot of our models, but also work together on developing models that can catch any open source technology. Now, this is tricky because to be able to do that, you effectively need to, maybe I'm going a little bit too much into detail, but you need to have outputs of those models and train effectively classifiers on top of that. So that's a good preventive measure, but not perfect. And that goes to that second part, like in the future, most of the content around us will be AI generated. And the way we imagine that, there'll be like 3 layers. The first layer is going to be a human authenticity, so we encode the code signals whether content is human in the first place. Second layer, all of us here will have our own voice agents, probably multiple voice agents that act on our behalf, maybe call a restaurant to book it or remind the doctor appointment. And you will interact with voice agents. And you want to know that they are authenticated with permission and they are the right ones. If you call into customer support, you want to know this is a right AI and not a spoofed one. So that will be a second layer, watermarking a lot of the AI systems. And by default, everything else will be fake.
So as and when ElevenLabs passes the speech Turing test, what's the most interesting use case you like to see, and what is the worst use case? So, for example, I can imagine that voice authentication for banks is simply just not going to make sense anymore.
The most, and you mean like most in general, or from the safety perspective?
From the safety perspective.
I think the most, some of the key elements will be watermarking a lot of the content so that you know that it's belonging to a specific individual. So we have, at ElevenLabs, we've developed effectively a voice marketplace. And it's one of the only ones in the world where we partnered effectively with the industry, where anybody can create a voice, share the voice, and while the voice is being used, you earn compensation as a result. We have 10,000 voices created this way. Over $11 million back paid earlier this month, coincidentally, to that community. And all of those voices were created with permission, with consent, verified. And you want to know that they were done this way. There's incredible styles and languages in that ecosystem. Also, the crazy thing is that with AI, of course, any voice that's created also is available in other languages around. So over 70 languages. We've actually had one of the very first voices that got created this way was a Spanish speaker, and it wasn't very popular in Spanish-speaking countries. But then English-speaking countries discovered that voice, and it kept this deep accent and became one of our top popular voices. So if anybody here wants to explore and create their voice, maybe there's a hidden talent there as well. But that's going to be like a critical piece, that ability to trace back that this was created with permission, that you can trace and know that it was created this way. And more recently, we partner with iconic talent as well, like voice of Sir Michael Caine across use cases. And here too, you want to know that this was created with Sir Michael Caine's permission.
What is your vision for the voice marketplace, both with the non-iconic voices and iconic voices? I think voice is such a big part, an extension of, so like in the simple cases, of course, you want to create, you want to have the high selection, and different audiences will want different languages, different accents, different styles. So that's the basic layer. But the interesting layer is, of course, voice is a huge extension of any brand out there. And that's how we see both the marketing assets, but also if you have a voice agent, the voice that the customers will interact with will be the ones that they recognize the brand for. And it's one of the first interactions with many companies too. Today, it's usually reactive when you reach out for support. That's how the voice agent will come across. In the future, we think it will be more proactive. It will be from the earlier stage of the experience. So in that sense, it will be a huge part of your own identity. And here, what we hope to provide is give you the selection and option to partner with the best. Got it. I wanted to get your perspective on job security in a future where AI automation is the norm. So given that, we talked about customer service agents being replaced by AI agents, a lot of people are thinking about job security from the perspectives of like what jobs would actually be not around in the next 18 months. We talked about customer service agents. How are you guys thinking about preserving that? I know we talk about like moving everyone to higher skilled jobs, but what's your perspective from ElevenLabs?
Yeah, so the first one, I mean, the voice is a good example. Like we are trying to figure out how to not only disrupt the industry, but work together with the industry to disrupt some of the process in that industry. And that's what we've done with the voices. I have a pleasure of being on the board of Klarna, a financial technology company. And in their case, there was like a lot of similar transition and adopting a lot of AI tooling inside of the process. And the way that it evolved to is you of course use AI to automate some of the repetitive manual tasks, and then you have the actual hard ones that previously would have not been solved or would take a long time to solve, and that's where a lot of the skilled labor comes in.
Yep.
What is very interesting is we've seen even higher investment in that skilled labor to help actually solve those tasks. And I think this will be one of the key dynamics we see across a number of companies, where that transition from manual repetitive tasks, automated, high-skilled human. But of course, here too, with time, those will get increasing AI disruption. So the truth is, in like the way I perceive it, it's a lot of the job won't be replaced by AI, but it will be replaced by a human with AI. And similarly, most of the labor will be replaced with the people using AI in the process rather than by AI in the full sweep. Same for creative process. I think AI is a great, like in a way, middle-to-middle enhancement. So you start from here, you can iterate, and then you still need to close the gap, but it's not going to be end-to-end. I'm like very against the AI slop version of like fully generated piece, because it doesn't have the story, it doesn't have the emotions, it doesn't have a connection to something that you follow, and
so something more nuanced to it.
Exactly.
Cool. So given that we don't have a lot of time left, I do have a final question. Given that there's a lot of founders in the audience, you talk a lot about speed being very critical when it comes to executing, especially in this day when the world is spinning very fast. How do you maintain a team culture, especially one where they could be remote and in various places? How do you maintain that team culture so that everyone is still hyper focused on speed and being able to deliver things of value?
So of course tricky, and I think we are learning as well as we go across. We're trying to be very transparent. I think this was like the key element of not like what's the vision of the company. That's easy. You need to articulate and make it clear. But then all both the negatives and positives, we are extremely transparent in what's happening at all times with the company, and that's definitely one of the big parts that helps us. So everybody is part of that same journey. And I would like even extend that transparency as I think about other founders. Ultimately, you will need to make decisions. Then sometimes they are saying yes here means no there, and make a selection between two camps of a decision. So what I think is super useful is, even if you make that decision, is tell the rest of the company or the team of how you see the situation, like what's the truth you perceive and what's that decision based on. I feel like that first step is super critical and helped us in many ways, where people know the reasons or the principles of where the things are coming from. So summarizing, very transparent in the decision making, and re-articulating the vision frequently so people know what the end goal is. In our case, it's reimagining how humans and technology interface, and I hope we can make it.
I love that. Thanks, Machi. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for the questions.
Thank you so much.
Great conversation.